following presentation was filmed live at the Littleton Studio School located at 23 Ammonoosuc Street in Littleton, New Hampshire. The Littleton Studio School offers year-round art and craft classes for students of all ages and abilities. For more information, give them a call at 603-444-1066 or visit them online at littletonstudioschool.org.
Okay, we're here with Chief Smith, Chief of Littleton Police Department, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about the budget this year for 2019 and see if we can help enlighten the voters at all. So, Chief, I see that your budget is really close to being flat this year over last year's approved budget. And, you know, there's some normal things in there that that kind of out of our control, like electricity, for example, is up 11%, but that's really across the board, I think, for all residents. There's retirement and health insurance changes.
Yes.
Yeah, and but there's some individual items in there that people might be interested in. For example, portable AEDs.
So our goal was to put AEDs, the defibrillators, in all of our patrol cars. We're short one AED. So we kind of phased in the defibrillators over a few years. This is the last one that we have to purchase.
That's great. So we'll be covered in all the vehicles.
That's correct. Yeah. Yes.
I see also media server. There's a small increase this year, some money allocated toward media server. What's that all about?
So as technology changes in our modern world, you know, as everybody's noticed, most police officers have cameras on them, audio and video recording everything that we do, our patrol vehicles as well. With that, we have to store that media, and so our media storage wasn't appropriate for the amount of video and audio that was getting brought into the police department. Plus, we do internal storage with just photographs. We might store audio and video from incidents within the police department as well with our own internal camera system. So we needed around 8 terabytes to get it to a sufficient level to properly maintain the media that we have. So that increase is the number so that we can have our proper storage amount.
Okay. I also see a change in the full-time patrol officer line item. I think that had something to do with in 2018 the voters approving, and it was a partial year.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So in 2018, the town of Littleton was very gracious, understood what our need for an additional patrol officer. We needed boots on the ground, primarily because we're in a drug epidemic and a mental health crisis. Last year was only partially funded, I believe only 8 or 9 months. This particular budget reflects the full 12 months of that officer's pay and benefits.
Yep. Any other significant items in the budget that you'd want to talk about? Or?
We're also replacing all of our body cameras. You know, with technology, there's a end of life, or they're finite items. You can't keep them forever. They do wear out and they do break. So our body cameras are starting to malfunction and fail. So we're going to be replacing and updating our current body cameras that all the officers have assigned to them.
Now, there is a warrant article, I think it's Article 23, and it deals with part-time expendable trust fund. Could you explain what that is about and what kind of need it addresses?
So that particular expendable trust fund is developed to address our budgetary shortfall when it comes to our part-time police officers. That's a very finite line as far as the amount that's in there. It restricts the amount of time that we can assign part-time officers to shifts It restricts whether we can hire a part-time officer and actually train them properly in field training. So what the fund does is it takes, this year, we're designating $1,000 to establish the fund. But in future years, our goal is to take unexpended funds in the personnel lines and direct them to this trust so that under the authority of the select board, we can expend those monies. So if a individual comes to the police department and says, hey, I want to work part-time, and we then have the monies there to not only train them, but to utilize them in the field.
At deliberative session, there was some discussion about the dog park warrant articles and the need for a dog park, and there were some questions just about, you know, why can't people use the ball fields, or enforcement of animals not being able, dogs not being able to run free on the the parks on the ball fields. Anything you want to add to that?
Well, not only the ball fields, but any of the parks in town, which would include Dells and other places. There's a leash law in town that does need to be enforced. Our officers do their best to do that enforcement, but we can't be everywhere. So as a force multiplier, we have given limited authority to some additional town employees and to allow them to enforce portions of the dog ordinance to take care of those issues, to help us take care of those issues like at the ball fields and in the parks. It's a health concern, and we felt it was a force multiplier, and it would benefit the community.
That's good. Well, Chief, I thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the time. All right, so now with us is Bill Sargent, our highway manager. Bill, just going to go over your budget a little bit here. I see there's some changes in it. A lot of the changes, like a lot of the budgets, have things that are kind of out of our control a little bit. For example, I noticed there's some changes in health insurance costs, Social Security, Medicare, and as it is throughout the entire budget, electricity is up 11%, but you know that's something that's in all of them. I do see retirement as well, and a small change in uniforms. Signs and posts. Can you tell us what that is?
In working with the sign committee and some of the other departments in the town, we've been trying to upgrade and replace signage that is either worn out, graffitied, or needs better description of what it's actually trying to regulate.
And if I understand this, I think that you use a manual of uniform sign code,
Yes,
and that really dictates what we can do, right?
Correct,
Yeah.
the MUTCD, and we're trying to make sure that we follow that to its letter.
You know, also in your budget, not much, but I do see small tools and equipment has a little bit of a increase. What's that?
That increase is come as we're trying to do more of our repair and fabrication right in-house, and that's not because we're unhappy with any of our local suppliers or fabricators, but the shop has been behind in the time, should I say, to get some of this equipment like a plasma cutter and wire feed welders and stuff that is really essential to keep a fleet going of our size.
Mm-hmm. So is there also things that you know everyday people use, like wrenches and screwdrivers?
Absolutely. Every individual at the garage is responsible for their general maintenance of their own vehicle, and you know, those tools need to be ready for them to be able to use. So.
Good. I see that there's a new copier on the...
Absolutely. Yes, the days of the department store copiers have gone by the wayside with our department, and we've entered into a contract with Ricoh in supplying us with a scanner copier, which has increased our production in the administrative end of things with contact to the office, since we're, you know, blocks away from each other, and it is helping out immensely.
Oh, good. And I was going to ask you about welding supplies, but you got that under tools. So
Yes.
yeah, there's a couple of a few warrant articles that deal with your department, your guys, and I see, for example, Article 11. There's a F-550 truck. How does that fit into the vehicle replacement schedule?
Vehicle replacement schedule we have set up and that we followed in the past years is with our smaller trucks, we've tried to rotate them out on a 7-year basis, and the larger 6-wheelers that we have out in the country doing the plowing and then hauling gravel and sand, we're trying to keep those at a rotation of every 10 years. Now, the Ford 550 that we're replacing this year was originally bought in 2008, and that gave it a turnaround time of 2015. So we're 4 years off on that one, and it's showing dramatically. The frame has been welded a couple times. The body is getting very fatigued. The trucks themselves, the minute we take them until we let them go, they live a hard life. They're constantly on the road. In the wintertime, they're in some of the worst conditions that you can have. They're loaded to their max, and I'll leave it at that. And they're born in the salt and they die in the salt. With everything being computerized nowadays, the corrosion, once it starts, it's like a plague, and it just starts going throughout the system. And then we have bought a engine analyzer or truck analyzer this year in order to help us try to track down where the different problems are when they start arising with the electrical problems, and that has helped. But these trucks, the truck we're replacing and another Ford 550 were both bought in 2008. The other one that we have, truck 4, we're keeping a hold of because a couple years ago when we were going to replace that one, we had lost the engine in it, and anyways, we didn't go for that truck. So now we've got an old truck with a new engine, so we're going to keep that one, but this truck 3 we'll really just let it go.
Yeah, good. Also, I see Article 10, that's road projects, and
yes.
There's a few roads that are on that. I know one specifically stated. You want to
Absolutely.
Talk about that? Yeah.
One of the roads that's actually earmarked on the warrant article is Crane Street. It's a heavily used residential road, which we're finding in town with the busier that we get, that our residential roads are taking it very hard, and Crane Street's one of them. So we're going to be doing that from Cottage Street all the way up to Remick Street, and that'll be a complete grind and adding in gravel, replacing any culverts. There's not a lot up in there. I kind of looked for the worst road with the less work for us because they still have many man hours that our department has to do, even though a contractor would be coming in and doing the work. So we're going to be doing Crane Street, and to a lot of the public's happiness will be the Old Whitefield Road. We're going to try to get there. There's 2 areas on the Old Whitefield Road that we've got earmarked to do. We redid one approximately 4 years ago, a small section that we actually did all of ourselves, but we're looking to do larger sections, which we'll hire a contractor out to do.
And will these be done, or if you get to that, would it be done in the same way that Crane Street is, where you're digging down and replacing bed?
Absolutely. Yeah. When we did our small section of Old Whitefield Road, we found a lot of larger material very close to the surface, and we would go through and do a box cut, what they call, and redo the whole road in the proper fashion into construction standards.
And what do you see when, instead of just putting pavement over a road versus boxing it out? What do you see?
Well, you're band-aiding it, just putting the pavement over right for now. On our roads, what we've found in my years of being here is a lot of the older roads were just just laid out at the most inexpensive way possible. And of course, through natural time, you get larger material that works its way up to the top, and it's good to just do a good box cut and
Get a lot more
redo
life
the
out
whole-
of it,
and
yeah.
get a longer life and better for the taxpayer.
Now, there's some other articles here that are dealing with parking in town, and
Yes.
it's been a hot topic. The select board did create a parking commission, which did a parking study, and that study is making its way through. I think it's been through the DOT for review, paid for with federal highway dollars, and it'll be coming to town. But the parking commission had some recommendations for the town. Now that Littleton, just like you were saying earlier, is getting a lot busier. It's always been a popular place. It seems like that's even kind of growing in a destination, and more parking is getting to be a need. And also, it seems like there's a lot more people living in the downtown vicinity, which is putting some new pressures on that as well. But I see Article 20 has the purchase of a barn, an old barn, to help expand the lot that's up behind Jack's Jr. and that area. You want to just kind of explain that to us a little bit?
Absolutely, Andrew. I think it's very important that the public weighs in on the purchasing of that barn up behind Jack's Jr. Theater. It add approximately 30 spaces, and it would fit into our schedule to redo and reconfigure a lot of the public parking that we have around town. It's in desperate need. We are getting busier and busier. If you get to any of the other communities that have large transient population, as Littleton does, North Conway, you go to any of those areas and you've got to look for your public parking that is accessible to your shops, it's easy to get to, it's safe to navigate, and it's signed properly. And I just think that moving forward with this fund that we have, or we're going to establish, it'll help us to maintain the parking lots and be overall a terrific addition to the Main Street area.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that this is the purchase of the barn it's one of these like real estate availabilities that once it comes along, if you miss it, it's kind of gone. In the public infrastructure over there, as it can definitely use the improvement.
Absolutely.
And if the public wants that, we'll go forward.
The town owns that right-of-way. It's actually Hillview Terrace, and it has the right-of-way going right up in front of the barn as it is right now. So in addition, with purchasing that barn and being a long-time resident of this town, I remember back when it was a business, and it's, outlived its usefulness. It's in basic disrepair. I don't think it'll ever be used for anything else. I think it's better suited that the town take it over and make it usable.
Yep. Yeah, we'll be able to improve traffic flow up there. And
I think there's a song about
that,
that, isn't there? Yeah. Building a parking lot.
I don't know. Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah, Joni Mitchell.
Yes.
Why don't you sing it for us?
Oh, no, I'll save you all.
Yeah. So with that, there's also Article 24, which has an adjustment to the parking lot enhancement
There we go.
fund. So this fund was established under warrant article a long time ago. I don't have the exact year in front of me, but the purpose of it was to take the funds that are generated from meter revenues and then put them back into pedestrian and parking improvements. The fund for many years now has been having about $23,000, which is a good piece of what actually comes in, put towards debt for a project that was done years ago to take some properties down in the River District area, but which was a good thing. But now we're in a position where the fund itself has very limited funds that we can't leverage to do additional work. So the modification would allow for up to around $23,000 of additional revenue going into the parking fund. that wouldn't have to come from tax dollars and would help us grow that fund and be used to leverage additional monies to keep our parking lots in good condition and our sidewalks, and just make general improvements without having to impact the tax rate. So I don't know if you have anything to add with that one, but
It's very important that we keep that revolving. Again, with our parking lots, some of them are in disrepair, but the lighting is also very essential, and for the safety of individuals parking in these parking lots, and accessibility, and actually engineering out the most maximum amount of the valuable space that we have. Sometimes when these parking lots were laid out, they were just laid out as very basic MUTCD, 8 to 10 foot wide, and you know, there's so many different ways to engineer out the alignment of the parking spots to get the most that we can. And I think continuing to build this fund in order to make our parking, the limited parking that we have now, but yet parking that we have available to us, to be used the best that we can.
Yep. Yeah, and in Article 19, the parking lot reconstruction, I think that's about $10,000, and really exactly what you're talking about is to really get the planning and designing and some of the seed money needed to get these parking lots reconfigured and used in the best way. Also for liability purposes, making sure that traffic flow through in and out of parking lots and lighting and pedestrian safety is also planned out, so that we're using best practices. So
Absolutely.
yeah. You know, I do see that, you know, it seems like parking is such an important issue, and it's showing up in all of our projects. The Saranac and Manusic project that we will be completing this year. Parking was a major topic on incorporating that into its design, and even with the sub-5 sewer project in Mill Street, you know, kind of thinking about traffic flow and if and when and where parking can go. It's always been really important. So it's
Absolutely.
an important topic this year.
Yes.
Yeah. And Bill, is there anything else you'd like to just say about your department? I know you guys do quite a bit with what you have, and have some pretty amazing schedules.
Absolutely. It's been a busy winter. Everybody knows that we started it right in November, and it hasn't let up yet. I'd like to thank the public for being with us and behind us and supporting us throughout the whole winter. I'd like to thank my crew, the entire crew, for pulling together and working as a team. With an aging fleet that we have, not to go any further one way or the other with that, but it is an aging fleet, and I have a group of guys there that have pulled together in the last couple months to keep the fleet rolling, so your streets are plowed, your sidewalks are plowed, the roads are tended to. They've worked beyond what I would have ever thought that some employees might think that this is my only thing I've got to do. It's not my job description. These guys have pulled together and made Littleton Highway Department probably the best place I've ever worked at.
Good to hear. Well, thank you for your efforts too.
Thank you very much, Andrew.
All right.
Thank you for your support.
All right. With us now is Brian Patno, director of what some people call the dump, others the recycling center, the transfer station. What do we call it? What is your realm over there?
I like to call it the recycling center because that's where our focus is. Trash is not really our focus. It's recycling as much as we can.
Yeah, no, good. So we're here to talk about your budget and any warrant articles, and to help provide the voters with any information that might be useful for them. So you know, I noticed that our transfer station budget this year is a little under 3%, about 2.76% over last year. You know, some expenses are up, some revenues are up, some revenues are down. I noticed that, you know, there's things like training, workers' comp, electricity's up 11%, but it's in every department that way. Liability insurance, but tipping fees. So can you tell us about what that is and why is that up this year?
Yeah, tipping fees that's pretty much how much it costs per ton to send the trash to the landfill. That is up more or less because we're getting more material in. As economies are better in the town, there's more demolition, construction, stuff like that. More people are using it to get rid of their trash. That's
Yep.
what that is.
So with that in mind, would you see, since a lot of those are pay for service, do you see also an increase in the revenues for some of those things like C&D or other trash?
Yes, definitely. You know, it's, as I said, we're seeing more stuff. We have seen an increase in bag sales, which is a revenue. How much, like last year, it was an unbelievable amount of furniture, mattresses, couches, stuff like that. So yeah, we definitely see more revenue coming in.
That's interesting. With furniture going up,
Yeah.
you know, maybe that means furniture sales are doing well in town.
Yeah.
Good for the economy.
Yeah.
How's the recycling market? What have you seen there this year? I know there was some reduction in demand for cardboard and paper products in
Yeah.
China that affected us, I think, last year. Is that still going on?
Yeah, that's going to be an ongoing thing. Definitely, at least a few more years. It's going to be tough. More mills are opening in the U.S. Paper mills, a bunch of actually steel mills are opening back up in the U.S., which is good. It's just going to take time, you know, but at least when this is all said and done with, more stuff will be made in the U.S., which is great.
Interesting. That's good. Now this year I do see that we have 2 articles related to the transfer station. Article 14, which is I think a standard one that we do each year, which is repair, replacement of equipment for equipment in buildings. Could you just talk about what that's used for?
Yeah, we ask for it every year. All of it comes from our fund balance, so nothing from the taxpayers. It's pretty much for, as you said, maintenance, repairs, any improvements. Last year we did a lot with it. We've done a new handicap ramp. We've done self-dumping hoppers for our scrap metal. So that saves a lot of stuff just being thrown on the ground, and then we would have to pick it up after. Now it's a lot quicker, saves us a lot of labor. But yeah, especially this year, you know, some of the equipment is getting older, and all it takes is one major breakdown, and gives it a buffer just in case something happens.
That's good. And so you could use these in the event of emergency
Yep.
to repair something.
Yep.
Also, this is something I think that's probably not been purchased in some time. Article 15 talks about an auger. I don't know if it's also called a precursor or, yeah.
Well,
you want to talk about that a little bit?
yes, we currently have an auger. It's for bulky waste, meaning furniture like couches, recliners, mattresses, box springs, stuff like that. And pretty much because we do have to haul it away, you know, if you don't crush these items, it costs a lot in transportation. And our transportation is going up 45% this year. The one we're replacing right now, 19 years old, and it's just seen better days. In the past 4 years, we've noticed a decrease in the weight per can. It's gone down about 25% because it's just so worn out. You know, we're replacing a lot more items on it. The bolts, which are about $12 a piece, although that's just a small amount of money
Right.
in the long run, but it breaks every week, every couple weeks. So it's just time to replace it.
And the real savings comes from, like you were saying, like the denser the product is shipped, then the less
Yes.
it's going to cost us in shipping.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be a big saving in transportation.
Is there anything else you want to tell us about for the coming year, the budget, or anything else about the transfer station?
Yeah, you know, because of the markets being so terrible, one thing we have seen is a lot of towns are reducing what they recycle, cutting back. We have been taking pride in, we are not only not doing that at all, we're trying to increase recycling. Even though the profit isn't there, there's still some profit. And that's one of the reasons why we're able to keep our budget as low as it is.
Yeah, so some towns are giving up recycling because it costs too much. It's costing less money to just throw it all away.
Exactly.
But you're able to run the facility in a way that we're still able to divert things out of the landfill, recycle, and make revenues on it.
Exactly.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you for all your work. Okay, now we're with Megan Carr, Library Director at the Littleton Library, and we're just going to go over some items that are in the budget, and I don't think you have any warrant articles this year.
Correct.
And so I noticed that your budget is really pretty flat this year. There's items in there that have increased, like electricity, workman's comp, property liability. You know, health insurance is actually down a little bit. And it seems like even though your budget's flat, there's a lot of increased activity and programs at the library. I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Yep,
and anything
so
in the
even
budget.
though we're basically asking the same from the taxpayer, we've doubled the amount of programming that we offered, doubled the amount of attendance. We've seen increased circulation in our print collection, so we're really just working on utilizing the assets that the town has, be it volunteers, various, some of our memorial funds that we have in place and grant funds to fund very exciting educational opportunities for the town.
And the library's brought back an annual event, fundraiser. I think it seems like it's really popular, the gala. And I don't know if you
Yes,
wanna
yeah, the
talk
Friends
about-
of the Library put a lot of work into that last year, and they're on track to put it on again this year. It's a really nice night out, very different atmosphere in the library, and a great way that also, you know, helps fundraise and keep the Friends alive, and they support so many of our programs. They fund a lot of the things that we do on the side.
That's great. Now, the library doesn't do just kids programs. There's kids and adult programs. I don't know if
Yep.
you want to talk a little bit about some of the things that you've done last year or coming up this year.
Yep, so I continued the summer author series that every summer for the past many years have brought in various local and regional authors to do lectures on their materials. We bring in other speakers for lectures on everything. We have one upcoming on cellar holes, about the history of, you know, why there are cellar holes, how you can discover the history of your town through them, and also educational workshops on, you know, how to do genealogical research, various computer ones on Excel and Word, and utilizing like our ebook collection. So we really try to branch out and hit all the needs.
And these programs, is there a fee associated for the public, or is it funded through your budget or donations?
They're always free to the public. That is our mission. It's, you know, free access to all. And a lot of them are funded through grants like the New Hampshire Humanities, the various art councils, also through donations from the Friends of the Library group or from private donors as well.
Nice. And so, like the kids programs they have, I think, like for example, Polar
Pals,
Polar
yeah.
Pals, yeah, and that's
Well, that's
good.
staff run, so we're not bringing in, we use a lot of volunteers, but it is an in-house program on staff time, and we use teen volunteers that are paired up with first and second graders to develop their reading skills. So it's a really unique program, and it really impacts both the mentor and the mentee, so it's really nice.
Yeah. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the public about your budget or anything else about the library?
I would like to mention that we are, I know a few years back, many of you know that we received the Heald Fund on Francis Heald's passing, and we are using that to digitize our historic newspaper collection at the moment. So we are up through 1959. So if you do any historical research, I would highly suggest popping by. It's so much easier to use than the microfilm.
And the library also, I think, is going through a conditions assessment this year.
Yes.
Is that expected to have a completion for this year, and what might it entail
Yes,
for
that
future?
is, we're doing a conditions assessment that is completely grant funded through the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance. That will help us create sort of a framework for where the building's at and if there are any future needs for it. That shouldn't take too much longer. We're expecting in the next month or two to have the final report. So.
And because it's a historical building, it's being done by a specialist. Is it a historical archaeologist? Is that right?
It's an architectural firm.
Architectural firm. Okay. Yeah.
That has experience doing historical assessments. So
Oh, good.
yeah,
Yeah.
we have a very unique building, and it, you know.
Right. Yeah, you need to be a good steward of it. So good. Well, I thank you for your time and telling us about the library and what the voters get for the budget. So
All right.
thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So now Chris Wilkins, director of our Parks and Recreation program, is joining us. And Chris, we're going to just kind of briefly go over your budget and talk about it a little in a way to help the voters understand what's in there, and so maybe some of the warrant articles that you have. So
Excellent.
So some of the changes that I've noticed that are in your budget are buildings and grounds position.
Yep.
And maybe you want to talk a little bit about the change there.
Yeah. So throughout last year, we had Patrick Donahue as park superintendent, and he was the only full-time maintenance person. We had the help of a part-time person as well. But with all of the projects and growing responsibilities of the Parks Department, we're getting to the point where we need that second full-time person. So we've added that into the proposed budget, and that will be a great benefit to our staffing, making sure we're getting everything done that needs to get done, and making the parks as great as they can be.
Yeah,
So.
I think anybody who's used the ice skating rink has noticed, like just that, for example, the quality of the ice this year and last year. And I think maybe people do realize how much time and effort actually has to go into that to get it to that
And a
level.
lot of that happens at night as well. And our staff have been able to get it done at night and during the day. So they already push themselves, and they do a phenomenal job. And this would help with that aspect of it as well, keeping the programs going.
Overtime, there's a little change there as well.
Yep.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about that? Or?
Yeah. So over the last year, we had a lot of overtime because of all those responsibilities. With adding staff, it'll cut back on the overtime that we had, but we do maintain all the parks during the winter. There are all sports during the spring, summer, fall that we have mowing for. And listing it out, there's over 80 hours a week of work with one full-time person and a part-time, so that contributes to our overtime, making sure that we can get it done.
And there's other parcels around town that are maybe considered public park, mini parks, and those have to be maintained as well.
We maintain the Riverwalk signs welcoming people to our town. We maintain those, make sure they're looking good. Different pieces like the junction of West Main and Meadow Street, that grassy area on the hill, we maintain all of those. The music park on Mill Street, is that Mill Street?
Well, Music Park is
On the music park behind
Ammonoosuc.
Bank of New Hampshire, on Ammonoosuc Street. So those are places that we maintain, and it's adds a lot of time transporting equipment down, doing the actual job, loading back up, and then moving to the next parcel. So.
And there's going to be increasing number of spaces that are like green space that are going to be little parks with the River District project, the Ammonoosuc Saranac project. Once it's done, it's going to have more space. So there's going to be more time demands on your staff too for that. So there's other things where I noticed there's little changes, like for example, pool chemicals. If you want to just talk up, like, what's the reason for the increase there?
Yep. So the pool was built in 1969, I believe. So it's around 50 years old. Throughout the years, it's obviously gotten older. The pipes are wearing out. We do lose water to leaks in the system that are underneath the concrete. We can't get to them. With that, when water drains out, we have to fill it with water and add chemicals to maintain state regulations with that. So that increases our pool chemical budget.
Now, I know that the equipment that you use to maintain the parks is used on a higher demand than, say, a homeowner's piece of equipment, and we cycle things out as they begin to break.
Yes.
And I do see this year push mower, weed whacker in there.
Yep.
Is there anything to add more about that? Or?
For the last few, during last summer, ours actually broke. We were able to fix the drive shaft on it and put it together, so it's actually taped at the moment. But we made it work just because we knew we were going to be able to get through the last few weeks of summer with it being broken. But those things happen, and it's just making sure that we're staying up to date with it. So by making a small change there, we should be able to start cycling through equipment, making sure that our staff have what they need.
Yep. And you guys have a high level of maintenance. That seems like I've noticed everything gets really well cared for.
Over the last few years, we've gotten a truck and a tractor. Those get greased once a week where needed, regular oil changes, regular washing, so that, you know, in our harsh environment in the wintertime, they're not getting rust, corrosion or anything. So Patrick and George are doing a great job of maintaining all of our equipment so that our investments are going to last us longer. So.
Also on there is audit costs, which is really kind of an administrative fee. You know, the audit costs are put into each department that is part of the audit, and I think that Parks and Rec really hadn't had that in theirs, and so that change is really just an administrative change of changing that over. Now, one of the more I find more interesting, just from my point of view, to be able to watch too, is the I see that there's a website registration facility rental tracking component of your budget, and like to maybe tell the voters a little bit about that.
Yeah. So a lot of the time, a lot of our time is spent with program registrations, facility rentals, keeping track of that through different programs, Excel. What this program is going to do is streamline all of our processes, save us time, and it's also going to be a more user-friendly based program, so that as a family you can register your family, and then see a list of all the programs that you're going to be able to register for your age range. So this summer I'm hoping to start an adult pickleball league. If you're 18 and over, you can register for that. All of our summer programs, you can register for the weeks you want to be there. It'll all be listed out, and you can do it from home. So instead of having to come in or email, you can just do it on your own. You can see all of your programming.
Will this help you expand programming more easily?
Absolutely. So the time that we are normally spending doing our registration programming, that kind of thing, the time we spend on registrations, we will be able to spend on programming and creating new events.
And for 2019, where do you see maybe programs expanding? And you know, I think that sometimes there's a misconception that Parks and Rec is just for the kids.
Nope.
And it's a critical component in our community. And I don't know if you want to just talk about, you know, what programs are out there, and maybe some of the adult programs that are or coming.
Yep. So there's a few projects that we're working on. One of them is we need to resurface our basketball and tennis courts because they're cracking. The high school uses our tennis courts, and the more they crack, the harder it's going to be to maintain moving forward. So we're planning on resurfacing some of those. When we resurface one of our basketball courts at Apthorpe Common, I want to add 2 pickleball courts, which is a growing adult sport all over the place, and I want to be able to start a league so that seniors, adults can come out and be able to enjoy those sports. We also have plans to add a few horseshoe pits. We're trying to pick a location and where that would be, but trying to get, you know, more of your park games, things like that. So
I think I heard something about a community hike, maybe
Yep.
last year.
So last year, in terms of marketing, I tried to do a few different hikes geared toward families, things like that. We didn't have many people come, and this year I'm hoping to boost the marketing, because in the area that we live in, we really should start utilizing the resources that we have. So starting at a small local hike, like Kilburn Crags, moving up, doing a Zealand hike, that would be one of my visions for an adult hiking club. Or yeah.
Good. And I think, you know, one thing that I've noticed too is, in addition to the programs that you offer, Parks and Rec also does a lot of collaboration with already existing groups that are out there, whether it be, you know, like a running club or a biking club or the ski hill, you know, that kind of thing. So
we're working on right now doing some ski lessons at Mount Eustis. So having their volunteer board help us run it so we can have some ski lessons. I'm looking into grants that we can purchase some bikes and potentially do a biking club. So things like that. We're trying to get more into the outdoor industry in that way.
Awesome. Now there's a few articles on the warrant this year that have some specific, you know, associated with you. So in the Parks and Rec, Article 9 is the dog license fee. Could you just explain what that'll do?
Yeah. So in town, there's around 3,000 dogs, I believe, and for each one of those dogs, it would be adding $1 to their dog registration fee. This would be an operating fund controlled by the select board. That would be for the dog park. That would be So our aim for this is people who have dogs are going to be the ones who are helping fund the operations of the dog park. So it's
Yep. Okay. So raise about $3,000 a year.
hopefully. Yep.
Okay. Now, Article 16 has to do specifically with the dog park.
Yep.
So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So far this year, we've had different various groups help us with fundraising. Recently, we had a youth group called Destination Imagination run a dog park activity night at Lakeway Elementary, and we raised $845 in one night.
Wow.
We had 130 kids come out and hang out with us for the evening. The kids did the work, they helped out, we were there supporting and being a community partner for them, and that was a very big success. Cub Scouts raised another $850 by selling dog paw balm, and so far we've raised $3,500 toward this dog park. The article, I think it's 17. Which one is it?
17 for the playground?
No.
No, 16
Article
is the dog
16
park.
is a dog park. We are looking for $22,500, and that would be to help us with grants. We've already started raising the money, but to help us go for some bigger grants, we're looking for that matching for fencing, landscaping, and features in the park.
Yep. And the proposed location for the dog park
Yep.
is right next to the rail trail,
Yes.
which would be really convenient for people walking their dogs or walking along the loops that are part of the River District River Walk. So.
Yep.
Now, Article 17 has to do with the Remick Park Playground.
Yes.
So what's going on there?
All right.
Yeah.
In May of 2018, I had a playground inspection done at Remick Park Playground, and the insurance agent who did the report wasn't able to do a full report on it. It would have taken too much time. So he emailed me saying, "Here are a couple of the things wrong, but our overall recommendation is you need to get rid of this unsafe playground and replace it with up-to-date, up-to-code features." So that was the start of this process, and so it has to come out. It is unsafe. I have that in writing. So the next step for safety is in 2019 to take that playground out. It would be too much to replace, repair, and put it up to code from where it is right now. So we've already, on the same fundraising note, we have raised $12,500 through a few local grants and partnering with Schilling Beer Company at their Oktoberfest. We were the partner for that. We've had a lot of good community support so far, and we're looking for funds to make that happen. It is a big attraction for our park program, for the town. We see license plates from all over the place at the playground during the summertime visitors. So it's going to be important to get that up and running again as soon as we can.
Great place for kids and families to
Yes.
meet and be part of the community.
Yep.
So we're good. And I think that's really what we have for the budget and warrant articles this year. So,
Yep.
Thank you for all the activity you've got going on. And
Yeah, thank you
anything else?
guys. We're looking forward to March 12th, and we hope to see you out voting.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with us now is Karen Noyes, Finance Manager, and also over personnel.
Overseeing personnel.
So, Karen, we're going to talk about finance and the personnel admin budget. And first off with finance, one of the things you'll notice is it's 8% down. So I don't know if you could just explain a little bit about how that, how do we get such a big drop there?
I sure can. We have worked toward restructuring the finance administration so that I am taking care of the finance portion and someone else will be taking care of the HR personnel administration, which includes payroll. We have divided out the personnel to be in the personnel administration, and then I have one part-time person working under me under the finance budget. The reduction comes from various wage and wage-related benefits. The other item is we no longer have anyone qualified for the retirement benefit, which saves a considerable amount of money in the budget. We have added into the finance administration budget this year $3,000 for the GASB 40, it used to be 45, it's now 75 requirement that's required every other year. So there was a little adjustment for that, which ticked the number up a little bit more.
Otherwise, we'd have a 9% maybe.
Yeah, we would have ended up with about $17,000 reduction in that budget.
So with the restructuring and moving some of the hours around, we also see a change in personal administration, and that one has a little bit of a bump. Could you talk about what are some of the components that make up that?
Well, the person that's working in the personnel administration is handling payroll. The person will handle HR, which I was trying to handle along with the finance piece. And it is a large job.
A lot of responsibility.
More hours than I'd like to say. This person will be handling workers' comp. Workers' comp's also part of this personnel administration budget. So there is a 3.5% increase because of the workers' comp. There's an increase in training cost because along with taking care of personnel, you have sometimes some department-wide and some town-wide training that goes along with that. So there is an adjustment. The total budget for personnel administration is up $22,347, but some of that again is from the workers' comp increase.
Yeah. Anything else that you'd like to tell us about that we can expect to see or hear about? I know finance and personnel are really in the back end of things and not really in the public's eye, except for finance during budget time. But any changes or anything that coming up?
We're hoping to get more involvement with each department in training across the board. The financial administration piece, of course, stays pretty stagnant, boring to everybody else except for me.
And me, yeah. Very busy office, though. A lot happening back there. And with personnel, it's just like everywhere, a lot of savings can be had by good training and doing things that are up to the best practices and legal standards. And also in finance, you've done a great job in there, and it's probably one of the most unseen departments in the town, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Karen and I are going to go over some of the other budgets and just kind of talk about a little bit of what has changed in them. So Karen, I see that the tax collector's budget looks like it's increased by about $6,700. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Yes. For many years we've had a deputy tax collector that has covered for the tax collector either when there's busy times or when the person that's the tax collector has taken off leave time. So we need to have that person available. We have budgeted 4 hours average per week for this individual. So we've added that into the budget with the wages related to that expenditure. That is what increased the budget. There's no other changes in that budget.
Okay. Now elections, I see, is up $18,200-ish. You want to just speak to that budget a little bit?
Yes. During this last year, we had some changes in staff in the town clerk's office. We have hired someone in because of a retirement, and that person has had a great deal of past experience in town offices and town clerk offices. So when we hired on the new individual, we had to adjust for that education and training. Additionally, there is some plan changes in the health insurance. So that has added in some cost. We have a little bit of data processing because there is a plan to, say, connect the dog license lookup so that when the police officers find stray dogs and they look at the tags, they're able to plug into the computer and find the owner a lot quicker. There's also a plan to do credit cards processing with a signature pad right at the town clerk's office instead of doing it online.
Yep. So planning zoning office, really a slight change. I think it's around 2%. What's that?
It's actually a reduction. And some of that reduction, or a majority of that reduction, comes from the legal cost in planning and zoning. We've reduced that by $5,000.
General buildings, there's a tiny increase, and I see that some of that is Basecamp, which is a project management software package and helps track projects through to completion with the complexities of all the different departments functioning. It's a program that helps keep everybody on the same page and have accountability to the completion of a project. Are there any other changes in that budget?
They're just little tiny changes. The Basecamp software that you're talking about is so that work can be assigned to different individuals and it can be kept track of and be checked on a regular basis. The increase is $1,200, which the overall increase of the whole budget for general buildings is $1,481. So the difference is made up by a few other items that have increased throughout that budget.
Now, the legal section is down $15,000, which is a significant reduction.
Over the past year, we kind of looked at what had been historical this year and a little bit about last year. And there was a $15,000 reduction because we've noticed a little less activity in the legal field.
Now, I know that with that, it seems like I know that what we've been doing is really vetting legally and liability of all contracts that come through the town. And it seems as though from some of the things that we've been part of, that some of that legal reduction may be due to that diligence.
Yes.
Slows things down a little bit, but government's slow anyway, so a little more. So
by having it vetted every time by either our insurance company or an attorney with the insurance company, we're able to cut out some of those little lines that may get us in trouble. And it's helping us to make sure that the contractor or vendor we're dealing with is following the guidelines of our contract, and there's less loopholes that they can get through.
And in contracts, it seems like the language doesn't matter until it does. And that's when you're in trouble. Now, next is in insurance. Under insurances, we've had a reduction.
Yes, under the town's insurance, through what is on the town budget, we have a slight reduction. Some is because we eliminated some things that weren't necessary to insure out there. We eliminated some buildings that we had taken the property through a tax lien process, and once that we acquired them, if they were not able to be sold as easily or saved because they were in bad shape, that has saved us a little bit in that budget. It's about $9,000.
That's good. Now, in other general government, I know the airport is in there. So that one's been reduced, and you want to tell us why?
Yeah, actually the airport is not in there anymore. The airport is not in the proposed budget because the budget committee made a decision to recommend to the selectmen to remove that and put it on a warrant article. So the selectmen did listen to what the budget committee was recommending, and it was removed from the proposed budget.
So the voters this year will have an opportunity to vote on whether or not they would like to support the regional airport.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, good. So in executive offices, they're down about $3,000, and that is due really to restructuring of positions, moving some of the some of the hours of the individual to a department where they're really doing their work. So the hours went from executive to personnel, finance.
They went to finance.
To finance, yeah.
When we restructured some of the positions in the office and we took a look at every single position that was in the office, and talked with the individuals, we tried to figure out what worked best. And one of the individuals that was working part for my office and part for the administration section of the office ended up coming in and working in my office part-time, completely in my office. We have your executive assistant that's now working 32 hours a week. We had originally planned on 20, but because the other one was moved out of there, you were able to bump up the hours a little bit. And another individual has taken partial retirement and is no longer eligible for the retirement expense. So that has saved the town a little bit of money and actually given a little more hours work.
Yep. Well, good. And I think that covers most of the other departments. And next we can go over the general overview of the budget.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the proposed budget, the total, and some of the percentages and whatnot for what it means for the voters and
Sure.
taxpayers?
The proposed operating budget is 2.73% higher than 2018's approved adjusted operating budget. The amount of that 2.73% equals $235,132. Now, part of that, of course, is the difference between the default budget and 2019's proposed budget. That difference is actually $122,531. So the default budget was actually 1.38%. The difference between the default budget and the proposed budget, I'd already said, was $122,531. The default budget compared to last year's approved adjusted budget is $112,601. So the difference between the proposed budget and the default budget is 1.31%. So there's about 1.38 between last year's budget, this year's default, and 1.31 between the default and the proposed.
Which is about a 2.73%
Yes.
from last year's approved budget to this year's proposed.
It's actually less than the CPI.
CPI, CIP. Oh, what is it? Oh, good. So now we're going to briefly go over a couple other warrant articles that are really more complicated, and if you do want additional information, there's some resources, but I'm just going to go over them briefly. So Article 2 is a project. It's the Sewer, Stormwater, Roadway, and Street project known as Sub-Area 2, and it's really a stormwater wastewater separation project that'll help us prolong the life of our wastewater treatment plant and also upgrade our sewer collection system where it's in really bad shape, and it's getting infiltrated with quite a bit of water. It makes our treatment plant go over its permitted capacity, which could become eventually a violation of our permit and require a lot more expensive remedies at the treatment plant. So this is a bond. It's a $6.3 million bond. The article is written in a way that it requires a successful grant application of a 45% match, which would really reduce the impact on taxpayers and sewer users. Karen, do you want to talk about the numbers or the tax impact on that?
Well, we are looking to bond this through the same funding that we did sub-area 5, and almost half of it is paid by grant. The remaining amount will be coming from the sewer users that through the process of billing, we will bill out. It could mean up to a 19% increase in their sewer rate. Many of the times that we do this improvement, you may see savings on the other end through not having to process quite as much liquid.
Yeah, so there's costs associated with treating the fluid that's coming into the treatment plant, and right now we're treating a lot of rainwater and ground spring water because we have to. It has to go through the process because it enters the system. So this is going to close that system up, and we may not see as big of an impact as if it was just the whole cost. One other thing about this project is this project area includes the area known as Main Street Phase 2, and so it really is getting ahead of that project and getting the storm collection and sewer system underneath the Main Street Phase 2 area done. So, and it is one of the oldest portions of the sewer and in need of help. So
There's been a lot of repairs there recently in different areas of sub-area 2, which by doing this, you're fixing a lot of those problems that our public works department's been called out on. And, you know, some of it has caused problems for tenants and property owners.
that's correct. Yeah, when the sewer backs up
Yeah.
and overflows into a home.
And this is paid for by the sewer users, not by the taxpayers.
That's correct. Yeah. Now, Article 3 is Partridge Lake Phosphate Reduction Study and Design, and this is an $85,000 article. Yet it has a $0 tax impact. This is required so that Partridge Lake can study and find out the best way forward to clean up the lake to reduce the phosphate loading that's in there. And in order for them to pursue a plan, they pursue a solution, they first have to get the plan. And so New Hampshire DES has a program it's through the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund, and that's what this project would go through. And this program has 75% loan forgiveness. I mean, not 75%, $75,000 loan forgiveness. There's an additional $10,000 in there just as potential administrative legal fees, and it may not go up to that 10,000, but we can't come back and ask for it, you know, after the fact. So this would be covered by the Partridge Lake Association. So the tax impact
Is zero.
zero.
We would not do this if we couldn't get the grant.
This is dependent on successful application to the DES CWSRF program.
Correct.
So, and the participation of the Partridge Lake Association. So next we have Article 4, which is the wastewater treatment plant assessment management study. This one is $49,000. This is another program that is meant to help alleviate potential future costs for plant upgrades. Right now our treatment plant is pretty old, and this will help us develop a long-range plan of what needs fixing when and prioritize the longevity of the facility. And the treatment plant, just like the collection system too, really is not only just a service to the community, but it's also a economic development tool, because anytime any of its capacity is used, it can't be used for something else. So we really want to preserve what we have and help make it available for its highest and best use and support the community needs. While this is $49,000, this is tied to a $30,000 grant, And so the tax impact would be the remaining 19,000, which, what does that look like for the taxpayers?
The tax impact is actually going to be 0 to the taxpayers and 0 for the sewer users, because the remaining amount is going to come from the sewer users fund. There is a replacement, a connection fund, and then there's a restricted fund that's only for sewer improvements, connections, new equipment, those type of, to improve the sewer system. That's all that fund can be used for. And there's plenty of funds there to be able to cover the 19,000 left, so there would be no impact to the sewer users.
So those are some of the articles that are out and separate, and they're a little more complicated. There are in-depth presentations on these. You could check the Granite North TV YouTube channel. Come into the town office, and we can try to also put some information up on our website if you would like to watch the deliberative presentation or get additional information. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.